For 500 years, King Kael Draven did not open his eyes. He lay in a stone chamber, deep below his old castle, his body untouched by time, his heart beating once every 100 years. Long ago, he had ruled the largest wolf kingdom the world had ever known. His word was law, across mountains and valleys, and his people loved him as much as his enemies feared him. But one night, a man he trusted more than his own brother turned against him. A witch's curse was placed on his blood, and instead of dying, Kael fell into a sleep that no one could break. The curse had one strange rule. He would only wake when the world above him fell into the same kind of ruin his own kingdom had fallen into on the night of his betrayal. For centuries, nothing happened. Kael's mind drifted through broken dreams as kingdoms rose and fell above him. He saw flashes of new inventions, new wars, new kings who wore strange clothes, and spoke languages he did not know. None of it was enough to wake him. The world kept rebuilding itself faster than it could fall apart. Kael waited, patient as the stone walls around him, for a day he was no longer sure would ever come. That day finally arrived in a time very different from his own. Cities had grown taller than mountains, but they were now crumbling under wars over food, water, and land. Old governments had fallen apart. People moved from place to place searching for safety that did not exist anymore. It was in this broken world that a young woman named Elara Voss was running for her life. Elara was not a fighter. She was a healer, gentle and quiet, with a gift she barely understood. When she touched a wound, it closed faster than it should. When she pressed her palm against a fever, it cooled. She had used this gift quietly in her small town for years, never telling anyone how strange it truly was. But her town was gone now, burned in a conflict between soldiers who claimed to be keeping peace and people who only wanted to survive. Elara had escaped with nothing but the clothes she wore and a small bag of herbs she used for healing. She walked for days, following broken roads, sleeping in abandoned buildings, eating whatever she could find. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not stop moving. On the 5th night, exhausted and frightened, she saw the shape of an old castle in the distance, half sunk into the earth, covered in vines and moss. It looked as if it had been swallowed by the ground itself. She had no other shelter nearby, so she made her way toward it, hoping to find a dry corner to rest in until morning. Inside, the castle was darker and colder than she expected. Broken pillars lay across the floor, and thick dust covered everything that remained standing. Elara moved carefully, her small lantern lighting only a few steps ahead of her. She followed a narrow staircase down into what looked like a forgotten basement, and there she found something she did not expect. In the center of a round stone room stood a tomb, carved with symbols she did not recognize, sealed with a thick stone lid. She should have turned around. Every instinct told her to leave the strange room and find somewhere else to sleep. But something about the tomb pulled at her, as if it were calling her closer. She reached out without thinking and pressed her palm against the cold stone. At that exact moment, she cut her hand on a sharp edge of the lid, and a few drops of her blood fell onto the seal. The room seemed to hold its breath. The symbols on the tomb began to glow with a soft golden light, spreading slowly across the stone like a spark catching fire. Elara stepped back, her heart pounding, unsure of what she had just done. The glow grew brighter, and then, with a deep sound like the earth itself sighing, the stone lid cracked open. Kael's eyes opened for the first time in 500 years. He sat up slowly, his body remembering movement after centuries of stillness. His senses returned all at once, overwhelming and sharp. He smelled dust, old stone, and something else, something warm and alive. He turned his head and saw her standing a few steps away, holding a small lantern with a shaking hand, staring at him as if she had just woken something out of legend. In truth, she had. Kael studied her carefully before he spoke. His voice, when it came, was low and rough from disuse. He asked her where he was, and how long he had slept. Elara, too frightened to lie, told him the truth as best as she understood it. She did not know exactly how long he had been there, but judging by the state of the castle, it had to be hundreds of years. Kael closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the weight of those words. Everyone he had once known was gone. His kingdom, his people, his enemies, all turned to dust long before this woman was even born. He looked at his surroundings, then at her, and asked the question that mattered most to him. He asked if the world above had finally fallen, the way his own world once had. Elara, with a tired and honest voice, told him about the wars, the failed governments, the hunger, and the endless movement of people with nowhere safe to go. Kael listened in silence. When she finished, he understood. The curse had judged the world fairly. It had finally broken, because the world above had finally matched the ruin of his own kingdom. Elara expected him to be relieved, perhaps even joyful that his curse was over. Instead, his expression was heavy, almost sad. He explained, in simple words, what had happened to him. Centuries ago, he had been a king, betrayed and cursed to sleep until a day like this one arrived. He did not celebrate the suffering of the world. He simply understood that fate had chosen this exact moment to release him, and that her hand, by chance or by something greater, had been the one to break the seal. Elara did not know what to say. She was a tired, frightened woman who only wanted shelter, and now she found herself standing in front of a man who claimed to be a king from a forgotten age. Despite every reason to be afraid, she found herself oddly calm in his presence, as if some old memory inside her recognized him, even though they had never met. Outside the castle, the night was not silent for long. The sound of distant engines and shouting voices reached them through the broken windows. Soldiers loyal to a local warlord were sweeping the area, searching for refugees to capture or remove. Elara froze at the sound, her old fear returning instantly. Kael, despite centuries of sleep, moved with the calm confidence of someone who had commanded armies. He told her to stay close and stay quiet, and led her through a hidden passage he somehow still remembered from his old life, even after 500 years. They emerged into the forest beyond the castle, just as the soldiers searched the ruins they had left behind. Kael guided Elara through the trees with surprising ease, his senses sharper than any normal man's. It became clear to her, though she could not yet explain it, that he was not entirely human. There was something wild and ancient in the way he moved, something that matched the old stories she had heard as a child about wolf shifters, who once ruled great kingdoms before history forgot them. In the days that followed, Kael and Elara stayed together out of necessity. He needed to understand the modern world he had woken into, and she needed protection from soldiers and dangers she could not face alone. As they traveled, Kael slowly relearned the shape of the world. He saw machines that moved without horses, lights that glowed without fire, and people who carried devices that connected them to voices and images from far away. Despite all these strange new things, he noticed that people still feared, still hungered, and still fought one another, just as they always had. Elara, in turn, began to learn who Kael truly was. He spoke little about his past at first, but slowly, around small fires at night, he shared pieces of his old life. He told her about the kingdom he once ruled, the people he had protected, and the friend who had betrayed him. He spoke of the witch who placed the curse on him, a curse meant to punish him for a crime he insisted he never committed. Elara listened carefully, and something about his story stirred an old memory inside her, though she could not place where it came from. One evening, they were found by an old woman, living alone in the ruins of a small village. She introduced herself as a descendant of healers who had once served the witch's coven long ago. When she learned who Kael was, and how he had been awakened, she studied Elara closely, then revealed something that changed everything. Elara was the last living descendant of the very witch who had cursed Kael centuries ago. Her blood was not random. It was the final piece the curse required to be broken completely. Elara felt sick with guilt, though she had done nothing wrong herself. She apologized for what her ancestor had done, afraid that Kael would see her only as a symbol of his suffering. But Kael, after a long moment of silence, told her that he could not blame a person for choices made centuries before her birth. He admitted that for years in his frozen dreams, he had carried anger toward the witch's bloodline. Yet looking at Elara now, kind and brave despite her fear, he felt none of that old anger toward her. The old woman explained further. The curse had not only been a punishment, it had also been designed, perhaps cruelly, to one day be undone by a willing bond between Kael and a descendant of the witch's line. If Elara chose to stand beside him freely, not out of fear or duty, but out of her own free will, the curse would be completely broken, and Kael's right to his old kingdom, or whatever remained of it, would be fully restored. Elara needed time to think about what this meant. She had been thrown into this strange situation through no choice of her own, and now she was being asked to make a choice that would change everything. Kael, to her surprise, did not pressure her. He told her plainly that he wanted her to choose him because she wanted to, not because an old curse demanded it. His patience, after 500 years of waiting, seemed to extend easily to her as well. Meanwhile, danger continued closing in around them. The soldiers searching the region were not ordinary fighters. Their leader, a warlord who controlled several broken cities, was revealed to be a descendant of the very general who had betrayed Kael long ago. His family had hidden the truth of Kael's old kingdom for generations, claiming the land and power for themselves while pretending no king had ever ruled there before. Now, sensing that something old and powerful had awakened in the ruins, the warlord wanted to find and destroy whatever it was before it could threaten his control. Kael understood that hiding would not protect them for long. He began searching for any remaining wolf-shifter families who might still live quietly in the wild places of the world, hoping old loyalty had survived even after 5 centuries. To his relief, scattered groups still existed, hidden in forests and mountains, their bloodlines thin, but their memory of the old kingdom not entirely forgotten. When word spread that their true king had returned, many chose to answer his call, drawn by stories passed down through generations. As Kael gathered his small but determined group of allies, Elara made her decision. She told him, without hesitation, that she chose to stand beside him, not because of the curse or the past, but because of who she had seen him become in the short time she had known him. Her words completed something deep within the old curse, something neither of them could see but both could feel, like a held breath finally released. The final meeting between Kael's small group and the warlord's forces took place at the ruined castle, where it had all begun. Kael, calm and steady despite the danger, spoke with the warlord's heir directly, choosing words over needless conflict whenever possible. He reminded him that the old betrayal belonged to a different time, and that the world they now lived in needed unity, not old grudges repeated endlessly through new generations. After tense negotiation and a clear show of the loyalty Kael had gathered, the warlord's heir, faced with the truth of his family's hidden history, agreed to stand down rather than continue a fight that served no one in a world already broken enough. With peace settled instead of further conflict, Kael's claim to his old land was restored, not through destruction, but through truth finally being spoken aloud after centuries of silence. The wolf-shifter families who had hidden for generations slowly began to rebuild a small community among the castle ruins, with Kael guiding them, not as the feared ruler he once was, but as a leader shaped by patience and loss. Elara stayed by his side as the ruins slowly transformed into something livable again. Her gift for healing found endless purpose among people who had suffered through years of hardship and hunger. Kael often watched her work, amazed at how someone with such a gentle heart could carry the weight of an ancient curse's ending without ever once seeming bitter about it. Months later, standing together on a restored section of the castle wall, they looked out over a world still healing from its own collapse. It was not the kingdom Kael once ruled, and it was not the peaceful life Elara had once imagined for herself, but it was theirs, built freely from broken pieces neither of them had chosen at the start. The curse that once demanded the world fall apart before Kael could wake had, in the end, led to something neither punishment nor fate had intended. It led to 2 people who owed each other nothing, choosing each other completely, and quietly beginning to rebuild not just a kingdom, but a future worth waking up for.